Welcome to Purpose 360. I'm Carol Cohn, and today more than ever before, companies, brands, and their partners need to stand for something beyond the bottom line. I've created this program to provide insights and ideas to share with you so that you can apply them to your work the very next day. The goal here is to up-level your purpose and to benefit companies and society. So please join us. I'm thrilled for our conversation today with American Express and its Senior Vice President of Corporate Responsibility, Tim McClimon. He's also President of the American Express Foundation. Now, why? For those of you who study the history of companies engaging with social issues, American Express has been called the founder of the modern-day cause marketing movement. In fact, the seminal campaign that launched that movement, the Statue of Liberty Restoration Project, was truly a first of its kind. At the time in the early 80s, the CEO of American Express turned to his head of marketing, a genius named Jerry Welch, and he said, "We need something that's going to catch the attention of the public and of our employees." Indeed, American Express focuses on the 3 C's. Its colleagues, their employees, its customers, and its communities. So Jerry Welch was thinking, what could he come up with that was really breakthrough? Well, one day at lunch down in the financial district, he was dreaming about what could he do? And he turned his head towards the waterfront, and there he saw on a gleaming, bright, shiny, sunny day, the Statue of Liberty. And boom! He's a great connection maker, and the idea formed in his head. He had read a recent article about the need to restore the Statue of Liberty. And there became the first major cause marketing event of our modern time. Use the American Express card, and a penny or two from that purchase goes to the Statue of Liberty restoration. Well, it was a smashing success. Over $1.7 million raised, with a 28% increase in the use of the card. Statue of Liberty restoration was just one of the many, many outstanding and long-standing and smart commitments that American Express has made to its colleagues, its customers, and society. So follow us on this fascinating conversation today with Tim. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me, Carol.
You know, you've been at American Express for a decade and a half, and a lot has changed in corporate responsibility, and even now it's called purpose. So I would love for you to just talk a little bit about what was it like when you began, and what's truly, we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty, but what truly stands out to you in the evolution of the company's commitment to society?
Well, thank you for those kind words, Carol, and thank you for that interesting story about the Statue of Liberty. That obviously was before my time at American Express. But actually, corporate responsibility at American Express goes back way before the Statue of Liberty. I would say that it started when the company was founded in 1850 as a parcel delivery service. So think, Pony Express, but with parcels. And people had to trust American Express to deliver those parcels to their friends or their colleagues all across the country. The connection to the Statue of Liberty also goes back a long time, because not only did we make our first grant as a company in 1862 to support victims of fire in Boston. But our first employee giving campaign was to help build the pedestal for the Statue of Liberty in 1885. So we asked employees to donate money toward that cause. It was our first employee giving campaign. And so that was 100 years before the Statue of Liberty cause marketing campaign that you note. So we have had a long history as a company, engaging with our communities, serving our communities, and certainly things have changed over the years. We're not a parcel delivery company anymore.
Right.
But, we created our foundation. The American Express Foundation was created in 1954, which was 4 years before the first American Express card, which is how we are mostly known now as a company. So fast forward a little bit to the last 15 years, lots has changed in the past 15 years. I think that we've gone from focusing on philanthropy and how it can support communities to really how do we operate as a business? How do we integrate our responsibility into the business? And now there's a concept called environmental social governance work, or ESG work. And ESG work, which is primarily driven by investor groups, really takes a look at how the company is operating from an environmental, a social, a governance perspective, how it is integrating those activities into their business. And so now, my job has morphed from being primarily focused on philanthropy, making grants to nonprofit organizations and engaging our employees, or what we call our colleagues, in community work around the world, to now it's really, focusing on what is the ESG strategy and how is that integrated across the business. And then how does philanthropy and, employee engagement and our diversity and inclusion work and our work with suppliers and the way that we're governed and how we operate environmentally, how is that all integrated together in the operations of the business?
So I'm sure that's a fascinating journey, and I would love to talk about the key inflection points and, what was happening that had it moved from philanthropy and employee or colleague engagement to truly integrated into the business. But I want to start with, what was it like when you got that job? 15 years ago, and American Express, the card, fabulous marketing, a great deep conscience. How did you feel when you got that job?
Well, it was great. It was really terrific. I was very happy to have been hired into the position. But I had been at AT&T doing similar work for 15 years. Before that, I had also worked as a lawyer, working with nonprofit organizations. I'd worked for the government at the National Endowment for the Arts, and I had also run a nonprofit organization. So I have a lot of experience in both the corporate, nonprofit, and legal government worlds before coming to American Express. And so while it was big, it wasn't nearly as big as AT&T. AT&T was many multiples larger than American Express, but American Express has such a great culture, such a great group of people who are innovative and creative and committed not only to the company, but their communities. And so it was an exciting time for me to come into an environment where individuals really do make a huge difference inside the company. And I was given license to create programs and initiatives and move the position forward. So I give a lot of credit to the person who hired me, Tom Schick, who was then head of our corporate affairs and communications department. Tom has since retired from the company, but he was the person who hired me and gave me that license to innovate and to excel and make an impact in the company.
And I love that that comes from your DNA, because, when the company talks about its vision to provide the world's best customer experience every day, and it seems that it truly walks its talk. So let's talk a little bit about that at the heart of your corporate responsibility work is giving back to communities, but you just don't write grants. You focus. And I would love for you to share with your focus is developing leaders, preserving places, and serving the community. So can you talk about how did you get to the focus? And then how did you innovate? Because I always look at American Express as, and we're going to talk about Small Business Saturday, which I just adore, but talk about how you structured what you were doing to make it powerful.
Part of the evolution of corporate responsibility over the years has been trying to be more strategic with philanthropy. So it's not just about writing a check to your favorite organization or the CEO's favorite organization. It's really about having a strategy behind your philanthropy and making sure that that strategy intersects with the business interests of the company. So, let's start with community service or serving communities. So, we started as a company in the service business. Service has been our middle name from the beginning. We've always been there to serve our customers and to serve the community. And so having a philanthropic theme that's about community service or about serving communities is really literally part of our DNA as a company. And we thought that the best way to do that, and we have thought that the best way to do that for many, many years, is to help encourage our own colleagues to volunteer in communities and to help citizens get engaged in their communities. And so we support nonprofits to develop their own capacity to utilize volunteers and to extend those opportunities to our colleagues around the world. So that one was an easy one. It's been in existence really for many, many years, predates me. We are very committed to that, and our employees are very committed to that, our colleagues.
Let's take a break and talk about the numbers. The company has over 65,000 colleagues around the globe. It ranks number 67 in the Fortune 500. It has over $198 billion in assets, 114 million cards in force, and it's number 9 on Fortune's 100 best companies to work for. But they have other numbers they're very proud of. In terms of backing their colleagues, they have a 100% score on the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index since 2004. 91% of their colleagues who participated in their annual internal survey said they would recommend American Express as a great place to work. You'll hear today that these programs that are initiated and carried forward year over year over year come from an engaged and energized environment and culture that truly understands their core purpose. And we'll get to that in a moment. They have 20 weeks of gender-neutral paid parental leave, and they offer over 1,000 professional and personal development opportunities. Backing their customers. They work with over 23,000 women entrepreneurs who have participated in their various workshops, and their card members have donated almost $100 million to benefit charitable causes since 2010. They're also very, very proud of their net zero carbon emissions, and they're named to the 2019 CDP Climate A list. They're also powered by 100% renewable energy in their operations since 2018. And they're committed to 100% responsible sourcing. I I could go on and on with the numbers because the company, again, focuses in 3 areas: colleagues, customers, and communities. Let's return to our discussion with Tim. I know you have the Leadership Academy. And
yes.
So because it sounds like you took a basic idea and then you've really evolved it.
Yeah. So the second theme that we have that you mentioned is developing leaders. And, again, American Express has always viewed itself as a leader, as a leader in not only marketing, which you've mentioned, but a leader in the financial services world. Before that, a leader in the travel business and the parcel delivery business. So we've never been a follower. We've always wanted to be an innovator, a creator, a leader. And we spend a lot of time developing leaders inside our company. We spend a lot of time, a lot of money, energy developing leaders. We call our managers leaders. We have been focused on this idea of leadership development for a long time. So it was fairly easy. It was a fairly easy transition to focus on leaders in the community. So if we're interested in leadership and we're interested in communities and in serving communities, we should be focused on developing leaders in the community. And when we got into this, which was really my primary accomplishment, I think, at American Express, was to make that linkage and to get into this concept of developing nonprofit leaders, and in particular, emerging high potential leaders. So we decided to focus on that segment, not at the CEO level, not at the board level, not at the student level, but really at the level of, let's look at high potential emerging leaders, young leaders, diverse leaders, and give them the training that they need to become the senior leaders and CEOs of these organizations. And so we started making grants in that area 13, 14 years ago now, and soon discovered that there were a lot of great programs that were discipline specific. So they're environmental programs, education programs, health programs, arts programs, but there were very, very few programs that were multidisciplinary in scope. So we started talking to the Center for Creative Leadership in North Carolina, which is one of the primary leadership development organizations for companies. And we started talking to them about developing a nonprofit practice and helping us develop something that we ended up calling the American Express Leadership Academy. And CCL has been our first and primary partner in that effort, which is now 12, 13 years old. We're now in 10 countries around the world. We have a number of partners like Common Purpose in London, for instance, and the Thunderbird School in Phoenix, Arizona. And they have helped us develop this week-long training program for high potential nonprofit leaders that's very intensive, but that's focused on developing your own personal skills. And we provide executive coaches to these individuals and provide them with training in business skills, using our own senior leaders as teachers of business skills. And over the years have trained over 5,000 high potential emerging leaders through that program in 10 or 11 countries. And now those people are becoming the CEOs and senior leaders of organizations. So there are a number of CEOs of nonprofits that have gone through our training programs who are indebted in many ways to the transformative experience they've had with that Leadership Academy program. We now have 3,000 alumni that participate in alumni groups and a LinkedIn channel. They now organize their own activities, both at the global level and at the local level, including an annual summit that we do of Leadership Academy alums. So this has really taken off. It really has a life of its own now, but I think is really one of the most impactful things that we've done, because we've really helped transform people as leaders of these causes and these organizations.
I can tell that you have a deep fondness for this. So I bet you could share, do you have one or two favorite stories about a guy or a gal that you worked with and they went on to something that just you always remember?
Well, like I said, I think there are actually many people that have gone on to leadership positions. But for me, the biggest accomplishment is that this is a diverse group of leaders. We've really had to focus on diversity, whether that's gender diversity or racial diversity, ethnic diversity, sexual orientation. We've always had diverse classes of leaders. And so we have fed the pipeline so that organizations that are now looking for senior leaders, there is a pipeline of diverse leaders that have had the training, they've had the experience, they've developed the networks that we've helped them develop around the world.
So I bet that every day that you wake up and you go to work and you go, oh my God, what is the next great impact that I'm going to do? I can see you're smiling. So that's a great thing. Let's talk a little bit about preserving special places, because that's got a huge, long impact on cities and regions.
Yes. So as I mentioned before, American Express is also one of the world's largest travel companies, and people don't think of us in that way, but travel has been an important part of our business for many, many years. And even with the American Express card, people using that for travel has always been a part of the business as well. So many years ago, actually predating the Statue of Liberty project that you mentioned, but really starting with the restoration of the Acropolis in Athens in 1974, we started looking at how could we help preserve historic sites that were iconic tourist destinations all over the world to promote the idea of travel to those sites. And we started working with the World Monuments Fund and the National Trust for Historic Preservation, started supporting these kinds of sites, and that activity just mushroomed over the years, so that we became in 1995 the founder and sponsor of the World Monuments Fund Watch List, which is their list that comes out every 2 years about the world's most endangered sites. And then we've supported hundreds of those sites and helped preserve them. We've worked with the National Trust for Historic Preservation in the United States on a wide variety of projects. And I think that one of my other success stories was to help historic preservation and the idea of historic preservation sort of come into the 21st century by focusing on issues like sustainability. And one of the things that we did was to try to engage citizens in historic preservation by opening up the grant-making process to the public. So we were really the first company that had an open process where people could vote on their favorite historic sites, and then we would award grants based on that public vote. We did that through a program called Partners in Preservation, and that predated a lot of the other voting platforms that happened out there. And it was a way for us to use technology, so use a technology platform to really engage the public in historic sites that were important in their neighborhoods and in their communities, and really have both a local and a national campaign to support historic sites, parks, other historic places as important, not only icons in communities, but in many cases, hidden gems in communities that people were not aware of.
One of the things Amex does so well is you stick with initiatives and you evolve them. And that's a key learning for any organization, because the public doesn't, or even if it's even your employees, they don't understand what you're doing until you do it again and again and again. So I know in our prep, you had mentioned you have something really new and exciting coming. So for our listeners, this has probably just been launched. And so Tim's going to talk a little bit about it.
One of the major parts of our business has always been support of small businesses. And you mentioned Small Business Saturday. We can talk about Small Business Saturday as something that's been going on now for 12 years, and it's been a successful way of supporting small businesses on the Saturday after Thanksgiving every year. But that particular program has morphed into a broader program called Shop Small. And this year, what we're doing is we're focusing some attention as a business on restaurants because restaurants have been particularly hard hit as a result of the pandemic. They've had all kinds of restrictions placed on them that are different from community to community. And restaurants are a really critical part of neighborhoods and the quality of life in communities. So we have recently just launched a program called Dine Small. And Dine Small is really focused on helping restaurants recover from the pandemic. And as part of that program, we have a new initiative called Takeout Tuesday. And Takeout Tuesday is really designed to encourage people to do delivery and takeout on Tuesday evenings for dinner. But as part of that initiative, we have launched an initiative with the National Trust for Historic Preservation to support legacy restaurants that are in historic neighborhoods and historic communities that have struggled through the pandemic, but who are still around and have been around for many, many years. And we are going to help them recover from the pandemic by providing them with grants so that they can make improvements to their buildings or their restaurants if they need to improve their outdoor seating, if they need to improve their ventilation systems, if they need to improve their reservation or delivery systems. Maybe they need to install new lighting. Maybe they need to create a new website or market in a different way or improve their technology. So we are hoping to support a number of restaurants around the country. Again, legacy, historic restaurants. We'd like to focus on those that are owned and operated by people of color and women and underrepresented groups as part of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we're quite excited about this initiative because it takes our support of historic preservation, which has also always been about travel and preserving travel destinations, to now bring that into communities and help support your community, neighborhood, restaurant in a way that will help them recover from the pandemic and be more sustainable in the future.
This is brilliant. And congratulations, because you have taken your core historic commitments, to your point about small, about historic places, about diversity and restaurants. I mean, that is your business, a big part of your business, and you've knitted them all together. And I love what you talked about, which is the grants, which sounds like they're unrestricted. And you're saying, they need lighting, they need seating, they need website, they need ventilation. And so that is absolutely brilliantly thought, brilliantly architected. So kudos to you. I love it.
Well, thanks, Carol. Just to clarify, they're not totally unrestricted in that we are trying to ensure that not all the money goes to rent or to payroll, because there are other avenues of support for those kinds of things. We're really looking at projects that will help them be more sustainable.
That's great.
Going forward.
Are there favorite neighborhoods that you're saying? Because I know, that might be included, or is it all neighborhoods?
Well, I think that we want to focus on historic neighborhoods, right? So not all neighborhoods, not every strip mall in the country, but places that are really historic places. I would say like Little Havana in Miami, for instance, or Harlem, in New York City. So we're looking at historic neighborhoods, historic restaurants, those that have been, around for many, many years and are really considered, iconic pillars in their communities.
That's terrific. So I'm going to be looking for a lot of news about that. I think, again, it shows the focus and the evolution and the knitting of things together. So that's terrific. Now let's talk to the cousin of this idea, which is Small Business Saturday and Shop Small. I have watched it for years, love it, shop on the day. So can you talk a little bit about when it started? Shopping small was not an issue. It wasn't a cause. And some very bright people at American Express said, let's take a look at this. And so curious about how it was hatched, how difficult it was to sell in, because you had to create a movement, and then some of your favorite parts of it.
Well, Small Business Saturday was created during the financial crisis. And what we were hearing from our small business customers and partners is that they needed customers. That primary need was, how do I get customers into my small business? And at the time, Black Friday and Cyber Monday were at the height of their powers, if you will. People were, if you remember, frantically going to sales at big box stores and department stores on Black Friday, and Cyber Monday was creating all kinds of online opportunities. And so we saw an opening, which was the Saturday after Thanksgiving, so the day after Black Friday, to create some kind of movement that would encourage people to shop local, shop with their local small businesses. And so Small Business Saturday was birthed, it was created. And it was very easy to sell inside the business. It was not my idea. It wasn't something that came out of my group. It came out of our communications group. And it was a brilliant idea that was embraced immediately by the head of our department, Tom Schick, and sold into the company very, very quickly. I remember the idea sprang up just a few weeks before that Saturday, the first year. And so we sprung into action. And one of the real innovations, two innovations of that particular initiative. One is that we decided right away not to call it the American Express Small Business Saturday. So we didn't want to have it confined to American Express. We wanted other businesses to join us if they could. And we wanted to be agnostic about how you paid for things in small businesses. So we would love it if you used your American Express card, but if you used another form of payment, that was okay too with us, because it was all about driving business to these small businesses. But as an incentive for people to use their American Express card, we offered that first year a $50 offset, so that if you spent more than $50 at small businesses, you would get a $50 credit on your statement if you used an American Express card. And so that was a very expensive initiative, but it was a very successful initiative because it got people out, it got them shopping at small businesses, got them using their American Express card. And now that movement not only is 12 years old in the United States, but it has moved to other countries as well. There's a Small Business Saturday in the UK. There's a program in Australia, in Japan, in other countries. And it really, the idea has been embraced by governments. It's been embraced by other businesses. It's something that we've continued to be involved with. But as I had mentioned earlier, we've evolved it now to a broader year-round initiative to shop small. And we just, last spring or early summer had an initiative that we spent $200 million on as a company to drive business and drive customers to small businesses during the pandemic when they really needed customers. And our Dine Small program is really about driving customers to restaurants who really need the business. And our Takeout Tuesday program is about driving customers to business, on Tuesday evenings. So, these efforts are really about driving business to our business partners, drive customers that way. But they also serve a community function because these small businesses are important in neighborhoods and communities. And so we see it not only as a business initiative, but also as a corporate social responsibility initiative as well.
And you smartly bring in other companies. I know that, especially during the pandemic, that your Stand for Small, that you helped coalesce over 100 companies coming together. And a lot of our listeners are like, I want to own it. I don't want to bring others in. But the sophisticated way of having social impact is to, as you said, for the original Small Business Saturday, you were agnostic about what card was used. And in fact, you incented your card, but others could be taken. So how did you get to that philosophy internally that it's okay to partner with others?
Well, sometimes it's good to own things and sometimes it's better not to own things. So there are things that we own. The American Express Leadership Academy, we own. It's our program. Our name is on it. We're proud of that. And it's not to say that we don't partner with other organizations and companies, but it really is ours and we own it. Our Partners in Preservation program, which I mentioned before, was not the American Express Partners in Preservation program. It had a lot of partners. Delta was a partner of ours for many, many years in that program. We had Lowe's as a partner 1 or 2 years. We had a paint company whose name escapes me in Minnesota that was a partner for a couple of years. And so, we always accepted other partners into that program. And I think that for Small Business Saturday or for Stand for Small, which you mentioned, it was really, again, the way to support these businesses is to drive customers there and to get other corporations involved in the effort. So we felt that it was never going to be a movement if it was the American Express Small Business Saturday. That's not the way to create a movement. So sometimes good to own things. We like putting our name on things, but sometimes it's not good to own things, although we like founding initiative. We like to be the founder and like to be identified as the founder. But sometimes the ownership can get in the way of success.
Let's take a pause from our conversation with Tim and turn to our In the Know section. Since 1997, Fortune magazine has listed its most admired companies. This list is created by polling more than 3,000 corporate executives, directors, and analysts. In this year, that number was over 3,800. For so many years, the Fortune Most Admired list was at the top of reputation when we would talk to clients. I want us to be on that list. I want us to move up higher on that list. Now there are many other lists, but this one has kept its prominence because it has been consistent for over 24 years. After a year in which humanity leaned more heavily than ever on tech giants to connect, entertain, and even feed us in a time of isolation, it's fitting that Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft hold the top 3 spots in Fortune's ranking of corporate reputation. Apple, certainly the premier personal tech provider, tops the roster for the 14th year in a row, based on the poll that was taken with these executives, directors, and analysts. A fascinating part of the Fortune Most Admired is a short list of the most overrated and underrated executives leading companies. I was fascinated to read because I'm a big fan of Satya Nadella, who is the CEO of Microsoft, that for the 5th year in a row, he has been named the most underrated CEO in that list. And why? Well, we're going to be doing an upcoming interview with Kate Benkin, who is head of Microsoft Philanthropies, in a few weeks. So please tune in for that episode. But one of the things I will tell you about Satya, and his book is just fantastic. He is humble and he leads with empathy. And one of the significant changes that he has made in Microsoft to get that stock roaring again and the company just innovating all over the place is that he has helped to evolve the culture from a culture of know-it-alls to a culture of learn-it-alls. Elsewhere on the All-Stars list, companies that became even more essential during the pandemic were among the biggest movers up in the list. Streaming juggernaut Netflix returned to the top 10. Big box Walmart, number 11, Target, number 17, earned the highest ranking since 2011 and 2008, respectively. American Express continued to hold its top ranking at number 20. So let's turn back to our conversation with Tim to hear more about the depth of their work with their colleagues, with their customers, and their communities. So Tim, I know that you have a deep commitment to preservation and communities, but you also have a deep commitment to sustainability. So can you talk a bit about those efforts?
For many years now, we've been focused on being a more environmentally friendly company. And you do that by looking at your operations as a business and what your impact is on the environment. So one of the things that we've been working on for a number of years is reducing our carbon emissions as a company. We've had publicly stated goals for reducing our emissions, and we are now a carbon neutral company. So all of our operations are powered by renewable energy. And I think we've done a tremendous job working with our business units and our real estate managers and our colleagues in making that happen. And we've had a real absolute reduction in our emissions as well as turning to renewable energy. But we've also focused on waste reduction, paper reduction. We don't use nearly as much paper as we used to, and all the paper that we use is from certified managed forests around the world. We don't use nearly as much water as we used to. We've significantly reduced our waste as well. And some of that just comes from very simple things that we did. So, for instance, we removed printers from people's offices. People were surprised about that at first, but forcing people to go to a centralized printer and then by default having them print on both sides of a page rather than one side significantly reduced the amount of paper that was being used in the company. So we took some little steps. We took some big steps as a company to reduce our impact on the environment. But now we're looking at how we can create products and services that are also more environmentally friendly. And so how can we, for instance, help our customers track their own carbon footprints or reduce their own carbon footprints? We, reintroduced our green card last year. It is a green card. So when we did that, we made a commitment to reduce our use of single-use plastic around the world. And we took single-use plastic out of our lounges and out of our offices. And so those are also simple steps. You get rid of, straws, plastic straws and stirrers. You change to paper cups instead of, foam cups, and all of these things, make a huge impact on the environment. So I think we've tried to integrate sustainability into our operations. And in fact, from a ESG perspective, so from an environmental, social, and governance perspective, we have developed 3 themes for our operations that we're focused on for the next few years. One of them is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we've made some significant commitments around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have another theme that's focused on advancing climate solutions, and then the third theme around promoting the idea of financial confidence or financial resiliency. And those themes are starting to coalesce around a lot of the work that we do as a company. So we take climate change and climate solutions very seriously in our company, and we want to do our part. And I think we've been pretty successful so far, but we still have work to be done.
I'd love to hear some more about your DE&I efforts.
So we made a commitment a few months ago, $1 billion commitment toward diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some of that commitment was directed at our colleagues. So we committed to 100% pay equity across our businesses globally and have achieved that 100% pay equity. We made commitments to how we recruit, promote, retain our employees. We made commitments to our communities. So, for instance, from a philanthropic standpoint, we've committed $50 million over the next 5 years to supporting organizations led by people of color. So we want to take some of our philanthropic support and then ensure that it's not going just to majority run organizations, but want to make sure that some of it, about 25% of it, is going toward organizations run by people of color. We also have committed to even doubling down even more on our Leadership Academy participants and ensuring right now we have about over 50% of them that are people of color. We're going to move that needle to about 75% over the next 4 years. And we've made a number of commitments centered around the purchasing power that we have as a company. So our suppliers, we spend a lot of money as a company. We're a big company where we've committed to substantially increase the amount of our spending that goes toward businesses that are minority-owned or women-owned businesses. And we also have done a lot to, again, support small businesses. So one of the other initiatives we created this past year was an initiative with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and the 4 national Black chamber organizations. So there are 4 national Black chambers that operate in the country. They have never had a coalition and worked together. And we created an opportunity for them to work together with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation to support Black-owned small businesses. So we committed $10 million to support those small Black-owned businesses through this coalition. We also committed to providing mentorships with those businesses and leadership development for the leaders of the Black Chamber organizations, which are nonprofit organizations. And again, we didn't own that program. We didn't put our name on it. It's the Coalition to Back Black-Owned Businesses. And we now have a number of other companies who have joined us as partners to increase the pool of money that's available for those Black-owned small businesses. So
you are so thorough in terms of, you just don't do one thing or two things or three things, and they're thoughtful.
Well, that's what makes American Express such a great place to work, is that there's a collaborative, creative, innovative spirit there, and it's easy to create initiatives and programs, and we try to do them in a thoughtful way and try to involve as many people as we can in the efforts. But we look at needs that are out there in communities, and how can we help address those needs in a creative fashion, in some cases as a way to differentiate ourselves from other companies, but in other cases as a way to join with other companies in doing it.
I think you're underrated in terms of, everybody talks about gold standard, integrated ESG actions in the business. And it's interesting, there's a humility, but you're not humble. You're doing great work.
We don't toot our own horn very much. I have to say, I think we don't do advertising around our ESG or CSR work, unlike some companies. And, while we do want to be recognized for what we do and acknowledged for what we do, all of these efforts are done in partnership with nonprofit organizations. I mean, there isn't one of those initiatives that I mentioned that hasn't had nonprofit partners. And these are real partnerships. These are programs that we develop together. We manage them together. We are jointly accountable for results. And so we like working with nonprofit partners, and that gives us a different perspective. It increases the number of people and the resources that are available. And so, we take this idea of partnership very, very seriously, both as a business, and as part of our corporate social responsibility program.
You always write a predictions blog, and you wrote one for 21. And you mentioned that virtual volunteerism has finally perhaps, hit the ground, and it's gotten credibility. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that truly is, was a challenge, and it's still a challenge during COVID. So can you talk a little bit about why virtual volunteerism is finally making its mark?
Well, a lot of it is because of the pandemic, right? So people are at home, working from home, or they're working remotely, and there aren't as many people in offices or in physical locations. So unfortunately, traditional kinds of volunteering, cleaning up parks, working in soup kitchens, working in food banks, whatever, those kinds of efforts have suffered really, unfortunately, during this pandemic. But our colleagues, we have 65,000 colleagues around the world or thereabouts, and they're committed to their communities. And so while we can't have them out cleaning up beaches or cleaning up parks or working in food banks, we can find ways of them to use their business skills in supporting nonprofit organizations. So for many, many years, and this is, I think, one of our other innovative programs that have been created in the last few years, we created a consulting business called Serve Together Consulting. And that consulting business was set up just like a regular consulting business.
I would like a couple more questions. I could chat with you forever. Measurement. You're doing such great things, and the question is that what do you do to measure, and how important is it to evolving these initiatives?
Well, there are two ways that we measure our success. One way is that in our normal grant making process, or our volunteer programs, or our consulting programs, each one of those has a set of objectives and measurable objectives before we go in to every single grant or activity that we have. So every organization that applies for a grant has to have outcomes that are measurable, and they have to tell us what they are during the application process, and then they have to give us interim reports and final reports on whether they achieved those objectives or not. And we rate every single grant or activity we engage in on that kind of scale, and then we track that and report on that to our trustees. Not only we report on it two ways, one at the end of each year, but we also report on it every time we go to make a grant to an organization that's received a grant before us. We tell them what the rating was on the previous grant that we gave them, so that we're able to determine whether this is the kind of organization we want to continue to support. So that's one way. The other way is that every one of the initiatives that we've talked about and today, whether it's the Leadership Academy or the consulting program or Partners in Preservation, they have objectives that we have and outcomes that we establish before we create and launch the initiative. So we know what it is that we want to achieve and how we're going to measure whether we've achieved those results or not. And then we report on that.
I'm just curious about Small Business Saturday and Shop Small. Are there also any use of card objectives added to that? So you've got both the social and the business objectives working together?
Yeah, no, not only are there use of card objectives, but there's just overall business increase objectives. So we are able to track through the National Retail Association and other partners what the increase of business is on Small Business Saturday. We know going back for the last 12 years how much increased business is generated on those days. And with all of our activity in this arena, we know what our objectives are going in, both from a business perspective and from a community perspective.
That's very smart. So I hate to bring this to a close, but we always like to end our conversations with what key 3 insights would you like to share with your colleagues? And colleagues, I mean, someone who doesn't have the 15 years at Amex like Tim or the years at AT&T. They're kind of middle in their career. They're involved in, CSR. They're trying to refine or evolve a purpose, or they're a student, or they're a career changer. There's so much interest in wanting to bring your values to work, grow a business, and impact society. So I'm sure you could give 100 insights, but what 3 might you like to leave our listeners with? Well,
the first one would be to be authentic. Because none of these programs work unless they're authentic to your business. It has to be something that can generate interest inside your business, generate support, generate advocacy. And in order for that to happen, it really has to be authentic to your business. It has to be connected to your business objectives, to your markets, to your partners. So it has to be something that resonates with people. And I think that you've seen that all of the initiatives that we launch really resonate with our people. And that's how you generate support inside your company and how that support then translates outside your company. The second thing is you got to pay attention to your employees, to your colleagues. They are your ambassadors in the community. They are your arms and legs and boots on the ground. None of this work happens without the involvement of employees, whether it's volunteer work or their own work inside the company. But none of our environmental goals would have been reached without our employees. Many of our community goals would not be reached without our employees. They want to be involved in their communities, and they are your primary stakeholder in corporate social responsibility. I mean, people think, well, maybe it's your customer, maybe it's regulators or the media or nonprofit organizations, but I think it's your colleagues, your employees who are your primary stakeholder because they're the ones to help you get work done. And then the third thing is to be transparent. Again, none of this works unless you are open and honest and transparent with your communities, with your customers, with your colleagues. They have to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it. how you're measuring it. We are in a world that there are no secrets. Don't even attempt to keep things as secret. It doesn't make any sense because your power comes from sharing this information and sharing, both internally and externally. So I think disclosing information internally and externally and being transparent is not only critically important today, but it's going to become even more important in the future.
This has been a fabulous conversation, and I so appreciate it. And I love that you said your power comes from sharing information. Because we see today that, you are such a role model. You're gonna go into my pantheon of gold standard practices. And so I will be out there. Now that I have greater, closeness and intimacy to what you're doing, I will be promoting you a lot. But a lot of, leaders don't want to share it. And they don't, and it's like transparency by design. So, it's so exciting about you and me. We've met and known each other for years. You are as excited today as when I first met you. You have a tremendous amount of accolades that you probably haven't gotten them, but I'm going to give you lots of them. You've just accomplished so much. And again, Tim, thank you for your time. And I just want to ask our listeners today, what is your purpose?